The cool light from my monitor reflected off the silent kitchen tiles. It was late, the kind of late where the city outside seemed to hold its breath. On my screen glowed the stark reality of my savings account, a number that felt less like accumulated wealth and more like a battlefield casualty report. Next to it, another window was open, a spreadsheet I'd meticulously maintained for years. Itemized lines stretching back over a decade, each entry a date, an amount, a name, Chloe, Mom, Ethan. Each line a small piece of my life force, carefully documented. The total at the bottom was a figure that, if I hadn't lived through accumulating it, I wouldn't have believed. $350,000. And counting. My phone, lying face down on the counter, buzzed, vibrating against the granite. It was a familiar pattern, a prelude to the inevitable. When the screen lit up with Mom, my stomach tightened. I took a deep breath and answered. Anya, thank God you picked up. Her voice was pitched high with that particular brand of panic she reserved for these calls. Mom, it's almost midnight. What's wrong? It's Chloe. Oh, Anya, it's terrible. This time it's serious, really serious. It was always serious. Always terrible. Always needing money. I apparently had an infinite supply. This time, the emergency was a supplier for Chloe's latest failed online venture, selling artisanally crafted pet rocks, if I remembered correctly, who was demanding $15,000 or threatening legal action. And apparently other, less legal actions too. Mom painted a picture of desperate men, veiled threats, Chloe in hysterics. It was the same script, just with a different dollar amount and a new set of villains. $15,000, Mom? Just last month it was $5,000 for her emergency car repair that somehow cost more than the car itself. I pinched the bridge of my nose, the familiar ache settling in. But this is different, Anya. These people, they sound dangerous. Chloe said they know where she lives. Of course they did. That's how debt collectors worked. Especially the kind Chloe seemed to attract after burning through every legitimate line of credit and borrowing from increasingly shady sources. I thought back to all the times. The first few $100s for textbooks that somehow funded a weekend trip. The thousands for inventory for businesses that folded within weeks. The rent for apartments she couldn't afford. The bail money for minor infractions. The countless urgent bills that appeared out of nowhere. I'd sent the money time and time again. Because family helps family. Because Mom cried. Because Dad gave his stern, disappointed lectures about duty. Because Ethan, my older brother, with his sarcastic wit and passive-aggressive jabs, would call and say, "Just help her out, Anya. It's not like you're using the money for anything important." He was the one who'd coined the nickname. I'd overheard it a few months ago after a particularly tense family dinner where I gently, oh, so gently, suggested Chloe look into state aid or budgeting classes instead of just asking for another handout. I'd stepped out to get a bottle of wine from the cooler in the hallway, and their voices, normally hushed, had been clear from the dining room. Honestly, Anya can afford it, Ethan had said, his voice dripping with condescension. She just hoards her treasure like a dragon. Mom giggled nervously. Ethan, be nice. What? It's true, he scoffed. Our family ATM. Thank God she has nothing else to spend it on anyway. Liam, my younger brother, had mumbled something in agreement, too quiet to hear clearly, but his lack of protest was loud enough. Our family ATM. Nothing else to spend it on. The words had felt like a physical blow, even worse than the betrayal of their constant demands. It wasn't just about the money. It was their complete dismissal of my life, my choices, my sacrifices. They saw me as a function, not a person. A machine that dispensed cash on demand, fueled by their emergencies and my lonely existence. That night, sitting on the cold kitchen floor after that phone call, staring at my spreadsheet, the usual weariness was mixed with a new, sharp edge of anger. $350,000. That wasn't just money. That was years of delayed dreams. The down payment on the small cabin upstate I'd wanted, a quiet place to escape the city and the constant stress. The funding for the photography course in Italy I'd dreamed of since I was a teenager. The sheer, simple freedom of knowing my financial future was secure. All poured into a bottomless pit dug by Chloe's irresponsibility and enabled by the rest of my family's convenience. There was the time about 5 years ago when I tried a different approach. Chloe was between jobs again and facing eviction again. Instead of just sending the rent money, I'd flown down there, spent a weekend helping her polish her resume, connected her with recruiters I knew, even sat with her to create a budget spreadsheet. She'd been enthusiastic for exactly 48 hours. Then the interviews were too stressful, the budget was too complicated, and within a week, she was calling Mom, who called me, needing the rent money anyway. My attempts to offer tools instead of cash were met with eye rolls and passive resistance. They didn't want solutions. They wanted bailouts. My phone buzzed again, pulling me back to the present. A text from an unknown number. Chloe's debt. $15,000 by Friday. Your primary contact. Don't make us messy. V. Cold. Direct. A shiver ran down my spine, but it was quickly replaced by a hardened resolve. This wasn't just family drama anymore. There was a real external threat, and they had dragged me into it. I looked at the spreadsheet again, the long list of transactions, the mounting total. Our family ATM. Nothing else to spend it on. The promise I made myself this time felt different. It wasn't born of weary resignation, but of cold, hard anger. This stops. No. I did not send the $15,000. The fallout was immediate and intense. My phone became a constant source of dread. Mom's voicemails oscillated between tearful pleas and furious accusations. Ethan's texts were laced with sarcasm and veiled threats about my reputation within the family. Chloe sent long, rambling, dramatic messages describing her despair and hinting darkly at what might happen if I didn't save her. Liam sent sad face emojis. I silenced my phone, but the emotional onslaught was relentless. It was during this stressful period that I met David. I had, on Jessica's, my colleague's insistence, signed up for a local volunteer program building houses for low-income families, hoping to find a distraction and some perspective. Jessica had noticed the dark circles under my eyes and my increasing jumpiness. "Anya," she'd said gently one afternoon, "you seem like you're carrying the weight of the world. You need something just for you." David was there, expertly cutting lumber, his face calm and focused. He had this quiet strength about him, an easy smile that didn't demand anything. We started talking during a lunch break, sharing lukewarm sandwiches. He was an architect, passionate about sustainable design and building communities. He listened intently when I talked about my work, my love for photography, the sidelined hobby, my mundane daily life. He didn't ask probing questions, didn't fill silences with chatter. He just listened. It was a revelation. We started seeing each other. Dates that weren't about impressing anyone, just spending time together. Walking through parks, exploring quiet bookstores, cooking simple meals at his place. His apartment was comfortable, filled with books and plants, reflecting a life built on substance, not flash. He talked about his family, a sister, Sarah, who was a teacher, parents who were retired and traveled in a modest camper van. They sounded normal, supportive, independent. The stark contrast to my own family was both a comfort and a source of fear. The fear was telling him, how could I explain the decades of financial drain, the manipulation, the cruel nicknames, the dangerous debt collectors, the sheer ugly mess of my family? It felt like admitting a fundamental flaw in myself, proof that I was somehow cursed or foolish. So, I kept it hidden. I made excuses for ignoring calls, for my occasional distractedness, for the stress that sometimes made my hands tremble. David noticed. He would touch my arm gently, his brow furrowed with concern. "Everything okay, Anya? You seem miles away." I would force a smile. "Yeah, just work stuff. Stressful project." He would accept it, but I could see the question in his eyes. The guilt ate at me. My family, meanwhile, continued their campaign. Since cash wasn't working, they tried different angles. Ethan sent a group text to extended family mentioning how Anya is too busy for family emergencies now that she's so successful. Mom sent passive-aggressive greeting cards with Bible verses about charity. Chloe posted sad, vague updates on social media, hinting at her struggles, clearly hoping mutual friends would relay the information to me. One evening, David had a work gala. He was introducing me to colleagues and clients. I was trying my best to be charming and composed. Just as I was talking to a potential client of his, my mother and Ethan suddenly appeared. They must have found out where the event was. Mom rushed forward, overly effusive. "Anya, darling. And you must be David." Oh, Anya talks so little about her personal life. We had no idea she was seeing such a distinguished gentleman. She beamed at David. Ethan, standing beside her, gave me a smirk. "Yes, David, lovely to meet you. We were just discussing how Anya is always the one the family can rely on, especially when unexpected expenses crop up." He emphasized expenses and looked directly at me. I felt a wave of nausea. David handled it smoothly, polite but reserved. After they left, claiming they were just in the neighborhood, David looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Unexpected expenses?" he asked. I mumbled something about family drama. He didn't push, but I knew he saw something was deeply wrong. Despite the stress, my relationship with David deepened. He was my sanctuary, the one place I felt truly seen and valued for who I was, not what I could provide. 6 months in, he took me back to the quiet Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. Over tiramisu, he looked at me, his eyes full of love. "Anya," he said softly, "I don't want to wake up without you anymore. Move in with me." My heart soared, and then plummeted. My phone, silent for most of the date, suddenly vibrated against my thigh. A text from Mom. "Urgent. Chloe needs $75,000 by tomorrow. These people are here. They're serious this time. Call me." 75,000. It had escalated that much? The number felt astronomical. I looked at David, this wonderful, kind, stable man who knew nothing of the chaos my family was. The shame threatened to consume me. He deserved the truth before walking into this. "David," I started, my voice trembling. "There's something big I need to tell you about my family." He reached across the table and took my hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Hey," he said, his voice gentle. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. That's what partners do." Partners. The word resonated deep within me. Could he truly be a partner through this? My phone buzzed again. A text from Chloe. "Anya, please. They're breaking things. They hurt Marcus." Marcus, her latest questionable boyfriend, another one of her bad decisions. David squeezed my hand. "Everything okay?" I looked at him, at the genuine concern in his eyes, at the future he was offering me. I should tell him about the $350,000, the nickname, the manipulation, the dangerous men. I should tell him that saying yes to him meant potentially saying no to my family forever. Instead, feeling a fragile sense of hope and desperate denial, I squeezed his hand back and lied. "Everything's perfect." Later that night, lying awake beside David in his bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the secret felt heavier than ever. My phone was off, but the image of Mom's desperate text, Chloe's plea, and Victor's chilling message were burned into my mind. Just as I was drifting into a restless sleep, I heard a faint vibration. I'd forgotten my work phone in my jacket pocket. I retrieved it, a new message on my personal number, somehow forwarded. It was from Ethan. "Heard you're moving in with the rich guy. Finally. Maybe now you'll stop being so stingy with family. We'll talk soon about Chloe's situation. And maybe Mom's roof." Stingy. Even now, when Chloe was facing serious danger, his mind was on Mom's roof and getting access to David's perceived wealth. The sheer audacity, the entitlement, the complete lack of concern for my own well-being or David's. It was breathtaking. And they were already planning how to use our life together. Suddenly, the shame vanished, replaced by a cold, clear fury. I gently slipped out of bed and went to my laptop. I opened the spreadsheet. I opened the folder with saved texts and voicemails. I started copying and organizing everything onto a cloud drive, password protected. This wasn't just for me anymore. This was evidence. This was my defense. A few nights later, David and I were cleaning up after dinner. The conversation was light, comfortable, the kind of easy intimacy I'd craved for years. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. "David," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "About my family. That drama I mentioned. It's a lot more than that. He stopped wiping the counter and turned to face me, his expression serious. "Okay," he said simply. "I'm listening." I took a deep breath and started. I told him about Chloe's chronic debt, not just the recent ones, but the pattern stretching back over a decade. I told him about Mom's manipulation, Dad's duty lectures, Ethan's cruel remarks, and the nickname they used, our family ATM. I told him about the spreadsheet, about every single transaction, adding up to over $350,000. I told him about the sacrifices I'd made, the dreams I'd put on hold. I told him about the desperate calls, the threats, Victor. I showed him the saved texts, Mom's guilt trips, Ethan's insults, Victor's chilling messages. And finally, I told him about overhearing them the other night, about their plan to use our marriage to use him as their new financial resource. As I spoke, tears streamed down my face, tears of shame, anger, and exhaustion. David listened patiently, his expression moving from shock to sadness to quiet fury. When I finished, the silence was heavy. He walked over to me and pulled me into a hug, holding me tight. "Oh, Anya," he murmured into my hair. "I am so sorry you've been carrying this alone." He didn't blame me for not telling him. He didn't flinch at the mess. He was angry for me, at my family's cruel exploitation. "This stops now," he said, his voice firm. "For good. They cannot keep doing this to you." He looked at my spreadsheet total. $350,000. That's staggering. "And they call you stingy? And they plan to use us." His voice hardened. "Absolutely not. This ends." I pulled back, wiping my eyes. What do we do?" "First," he said, looking directly into my eyes, "no more secrets between us. Ever. We're a team. Second, we figure out the smartest way to handle this. Not just Chloe's immediate debt, but the whole toxic dynamic." He paused. "You know, I overheard Ethan saying they plan to use our marriage. That's a special kind of awful. It tells you everything you need to know about how they see you and us." That realization, hearing David articulate the depth of their betrayal, solidified my resolve. It wasn't just money. It was their casual dehumanization of me and their willingness to drag David into their mess. The call came at 3 a.m. My phone, which I now kept on my nightstand, vibrated violently. Mom's name flashed on the screen, followed by Dad's, then Ethan's. The texts were flooding in. "He's here. They're hurting Chloe. Anya, you have to come. They know your address. Victor's serious." David was instantly awake. "What is it?" It's Chloe. "And Victor," I said, my voice trembling but my mind strangely clear. "It's the $75,000. They're at the house." "I'm coming with you," David said without hesitation, already getting dressed. The drive to my parents' house felt surreal. The city was asleep, but my world was a hurricane. When we arrived, the scene was chaos. Victor stood calmly in the living room with two imposing men beside him. Chloe was huddled on the couch, sobbing, holding her arm. Mom was pacing and wailing. Dad stood by the fireplace, his face ashen, looking older and more helpless than I'd ever seen him. Ethan was hovering, agitated, occasionally shooting dirty looks at Chloe. Liam was in the corner, silent and wide-eyed. Well, Victor said, his voice smooth, almost bored, as we entered. "The sister arrives. The one with the deep pockets, I hear." He looked pointedly at David. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. "How much?" $75,000, Victor stated. "Plus interest. Due immediately. Like, now." The room was silent. Even Mom stopped crying for a second. "That's impossible," I said. "Last week it was $15,000. Victor shrugged, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. "Interest accrues. And your sister took out another small loan to cover the first one. Bad decision. She's been busy." I looked at Chloe. "Another loan?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. My gaze flickered to Marcus, her boyfriend, who was sitting next to her looking equally terrified and useless. He was probably involved somehow. This woman just could not stop digging. Victor checked his watch. "My patience is thin. The money. Or we start making things uncomfortable. Starting with the girl." He gestured vaguely at Chloe. Or maybe he looked at David, then back at me. We start with the ones who enabled her. We know where you live now, Anya. Lovely apartment. The implied threat against me, against our home, against David, sent a jolt of cold fury through me. This wasn't just Chloe's problem anymore. They had brought this danger to my doorstep. As Victor stepped back to make a phone call, my family swarmed me. Anya, please. You have to help her. Mom grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. She's your sister. You can't let them hurt her. Family takes care of family, Dad said, finding his authoritative voice now that it was convenient. You and David, surely you can cover this? Don't. David's voice was low, dangerous, cutting through the noise. Do not finish that sentence. Ethan stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. Look what you did. If you'd just paid the $15,000, this wouldn't have happened. This is on you. Selfish. Mom shrieked. After everything we did for you. Selfish? Me? The word ignited something deep inside me. I looked at their faces. Mom's fake tears, Dad's demanding stare, Ethan's furious accusation, Chloe's helpless act, Liam's silent complicity. They stood there, in a home I had helped them keep afloat numerous times, demanding my money, our safety net, to fix a problem they enabled, brought to their doorstep by a danger they had allowed Chloe to court. I felt a wave of calm wash over me, a strange sense of clarity born from years of pain and recent resolution. My voice was steady, almost quiet, cutting through their hysteria. Selfish, I repeated, looking directly at Ethan. Is that what you called me? Your family ATM? Because I wasn't dispensing cash fast enough. Ethan's eyes widened, surprised I'd heard. Mom gasped. You want to talk about money? I continued, pulling out my phone and opening the spreadsheet file. Let's talk about money. I projected the file onto the large screen TV in the living room, usually used for family photos. The rows and columns, the dates, the amounts, the names, stark and undeniable. This, I said, my voice growing stronger, is every single dollar I have given this family over the past 12 years. Itemized. Documented. I scrolled down. $350,412.67. And that's just what went directly to debts, bills, and emergencies. Not counting the groceries, the gifts, the help I gave before I started keeping records. The room was dead silent again, except for Mom's soft whimpers. They stared at the screen, at the number, at the undeniable proof of my sacrifice. You call me selfish? I looked at Mom. I sacrificed my future, my dreams, my financial security. For this. I gestured around the room, at the chaos, at Chloe, at Victor's men. For a problem you enabled over and over again? I turned to Chloe. You lied. You manipulated. You refused to take responsibility. You burned every bridge and dug yourself deeper, knowing I was always there to bail you out. Well, the bank is closed, Chloe. Permanently. To Ethan. You mocked me behind my back, called me names, and now you blame me for the consequences of your enabling? To Dad. You invoked family duty? Is this your idea of family duty? Exploiting the one person responsible enough to save money. But you make good money. Ethan stammered, recovering slightly. And now with David. Stop, David said, his voice like ice. He stepped fully in front of me. Anya is not your personal bank. And I am certainly not. You created this situation. You enabled Chloe. You relied on Anya's generosity instead of getting your sister help or facing the consequences yourselves. They're going to hurt her. Mom wailed, pointing at Victor. Then you should have thought about that before she borrowed money from dangerous people, I said, my voice flat. There are options. Bankruptcy. Rehab. The police if you feel threatened. But I am not writing a check. Dad finally spoke, his voice rough. Anya, you're signing your sister's death warrant. No, I replied, meeting his gaze directly. You all did that. Every time you called me instead of insisting she get help. Every time you covered for her. Every time you chose the easy way out for yourselves. Victor, who had been listening with an almost amused expression, checked his watch again. Time's up, he said, his tone final. I looked at my family one last time. There was no love in their eyes, only panic, anger, and resentment. It was a painful, heartbreaking realization. The fairy tale of family was just that, a fairy tale. "I'm done," I said clearly, walking towards the door. David was right beside me. "Figure it out yourselves." "Anya." Mom's voice was a desperate shriek behind me. "You can't leave your sister like this." I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. I turned back, meeting their eyes one last time. "Watch me." We got into David's car. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't buckle my seatbelt. David gently did it for me. He started the engine. The car felt like a bubble of safety, leaving the toxic storm behind. "You did the right thing," David said, his voice calm. "Did I?" Tears welled up again. This time of grief for the family I was losing, the one I'd always yearned for. What if he really hurts her?" "Anya," he said, taking my hand. "That is on Chloe and on your family who enabled her and on the choices they all made. It is not and never was on you." My phone, which I had turned back on in the car, immediately started vibrating. A flood of messages. Ethan calling me a monster. Mom saying she regretted the day I was born. Dad disowning me. Liam sending a stream of question marks and crying emojis. I silenced it again, then blocked their numbers. All of them. It felt drastic, painful, but necessary. In the quiet of the car, driving away from the house I grew up in, away from the people who had taken so much, a sense of profound sadness settled over me. But beneath it, a fragile seed of liberation began to sprout. I had faced them. I had told the truth. I had chosen myself. Over the next few weeks, the silence from my family was punctuated only by blocked call notifications and emails that automatically went to a filtered folder. We heard indirectly, through a distant cousin who was appalled by the situation, that Chloe had indeed faced consequences. Victor had taken assets from the family home, and Chloe had been forced to declare bankruptcy, losing everything she owned, which wasn't much. But it was hers to lose. The family was scrambling, blaming each other, and still, incredibly, blaming me. David and I met with a lawyer specializing in family financial matters. She advised me on protecting my assets and establishing clear legal boundaries, reinforcing that I was under no obligation to support adult family members. It was a practical step, one that felt incredibly empowering after years of emotional manipulation. And then I started living. Really living. I booked that trip to Italy, not for a photography course, but just for myself and David to wander and explore. I started spending money on things that brought me joy, good wine, art classes, dinners out with David, investing in my photography gear. Small things, big things. It wasn't frivolous. It was reclaiming what was mine. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of guilt, of sadness for the loss, of wondering if I could have done anything differently. But then I would look at the peace in my apartment, at David's steady presence beside me, at the numbers in my bank account growing for me, and I knew I had made the only choice I could. My family might never forgive me. They might continue to paint me as the villain, the heartless sister who abandoned them, but they no longer saw me as their ATM. And more importantly, I no longer saw myself that way either. I was Anya. And finally, I was free to build my own life on my own terms with the man who loved me for me. The clock had stopped ticking on their debt, but it had started a new countdown on my own future, a future I was finally in control of.